tariffs, you still think we get to new highs in 2025?
As you know, Bitcoin's above its April 2nd level. So Bitcoin, I think, is telling us the S&P should recover. I think new highs are possible this year. I mean, one reason is, companies have proven themselves to manage through shocks, and I don't think investors give them enough credit. That happened with COVID. Companies survived. Companies survived a bullwhip effect on the economy. They survived a surge in inflation. They survived the Fed hiking at the fastest rate ever. So I think this tariff shock, while it is shocking, I think earnings will probably outperform expectations, even if we don't know the effects of the tariff.
Tom Lee is optimistic that despite tariff concerns, both the stock market and Bitcoin could reach new highs in 2025. He points out that companies have shown resilience through past economic shocks, and Bitcoin's recent performance suggests a market recovery. Lee believes earnings may exceed expectations even with tariff uncertainties, making Bitcoin an important hedge in uncertain times. He also highlights improving market conditions like lower volatility and better credit, which support positive growth prospects. Institutional interest in Bitcoin, especially through ETFs, is growing, signaling a maturing crypto market. Lee and Binance CEO CZ see Bitcoin and blockchain as key drivers for future innovation, including AI and science funding, making crypto an important part of the financial future.
The peak tariff angst was hit when you said it was hit, and couldn't it come back still, though?
Joe, I do think tariff fears can come back, but the stock market and I think the macro is in a better place today than it was on April 7th. One is I think that the tariff expectations, even if we don't know what they end up looking like, are really much better than what we saw on April 2nd. The second is that the markets that lead stocks, such as credit and the VIX and high yield, are in a much better place. High yield has recovered almost all the widening that happened since April 7th, and the VIX is uninverting the term structure, which basically means the market for volatility is calming down. And then I think when we look at 2026, I think there is stuff to have some confidence about because the economy is holding up better at the moment, and next year we can look forward to deregulation. I think the comparisons for earnings will be much better for next year. And then, of course, if we get some tariff policies that lead to exports, we have upside to earnings growth. So all in all, I think it makes sense that the markets have recovered to this point. But the bar for recovering to all-time highs is, of course, higher. But I do think the risk-reward is actually still positive here.
Do you think with the tariff regime as it is, some of the comments made by President Trump over the weekend, if these are temporary, why would anyone build a plant here?
I think the inflation data recently shows inflation is tracking lower than expected. The Fed has been on hold, and they're saying they're waiting for tariffs. But what's interesting is the ECB has been cutting rates, even though there's tariffs, inflation hitting Europe, or soon to hit Europe. The reason is ECB's inflation measure, the HICP, exclude shelter. If the Fed excluded shelter from its core inflation calculation, it's lower than Europe now, and yet Fed funds is over 225 basis points tighter than Europe. So I can actually sympathize with the argument the Fed should be cutting now, even if we don't know the effects of the tariffs. The two leading indicators for inflation should be commodities, and oil is telling us inflation is weaker. And the labor market, the JOLTS data shows the job market's not that strong, so there's not really a wage pushing inflation.
Tariffs, you still think we get to new highs in 2025 or by 2026?
Yes, I think new highs are possible this year. I mean, one reason is, companies have proven themselves to manage through shocks, and I don't think investors give them enough credit. That happened with COVID. Companies survived. Companies survived a bullwhip effect on the economy. They survived a surge in inflation. They survived the Fed hiking at the fastest rate ever. So I think this tariff shock, while it is shocking, I think earnings will probably outperform expectations. I mean, that'd be one thing. And then I think the things that were leading us down, whether it's Tesla or the Mag 7 or Bitcoin, they've begun to recover. In fact, as you know, Bitcoin's above its April 2nd level. So Bitcoin, I think, is telling us the S&P should recover economic data for the next 3 quarters, not only the tariffs, but some of the bullwhip effects and the distortions that have been introduced.
For the next 3 quarters?
Yes.
9 more months of a lack of clarity?
Yes, because I think at the core, I think the stock market's trying to figure out, is this a dip in noisiness, but we exit 2026 in better shape? But of course, if we don't get trade visibility, and so 2026 looks like we're dragging for another 2 or 3 quarters into 2026, then of course the stock market is going to have problems.
All right.
Tom Lee believes that despite tariff worries, the stock market and Bitcoin could reach new highs in 2025 because companies have adapted well to economic challenges. He sees Bitcoin as a strong hedge when traditional markets struggle, supported by improving market conditions and growing institutional interest through ETF. Lee and Binance CEO CZ also highlight how blockchain and crypto are becoming essential for future tech like AI and scientific research. This shows cryptocurrencies will play a bigger role in investing and innovation soon.
There's big traditional companies doing that, BlackRock, Citadels, etc. And also the ETFs are interesting because now we're bringing the traditional institution money into crypto. Most of the money in the US is institutional money.
Yeah.
The rest of the world is a little bit different, but I think we've seen the effect of that. Bitcoin is going up, and because most of the ETFs are Bitcoin based. So, so I think there's a lot of going on. Yeah.
What do you think the total crypto market cap will be by the end of year?
Maybe 5 trillion.
What do you think the price of Bitcoin tops at this cycle?
Again, very difficult question. Somewhere between 500K to $1 million, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff happening, sort of like below the noise, right? So I think AI is a big sector. So AI will marry blockchain. AI needs blockchain. AI is a post-blockchain technology. So you will use blockchain natively. And blockchain can use AI a lot as well. And then science, what we call DeSci, I think that still has a lot of long-term positive impact. Fundraising in science is difficult. The problem is science takes a long time, right? So for the meme coin traders, they're not interested in that. They want return next day. But I think science long-term is going to be huge, biotech, etc. So it's very conceivable to use crypto smart contracts to raise money for science projects and deliver them on milestone basis or on a time basis, and incentivize millions of small research labs around the world to be able to do their research. And that combined with big data, AI capabilities, I think we'll see a lot of accelerations in terms of drug discovery, understand human biology.
That's great.
So all of that stuff is going to happen, and it is happening. And then he was running for president. I was like, okay, yeah, this would be the best thing. And then he became pro crypto, and then you can see that he's really pro crypto.
Yeah.
He's not just talking about.
No,
it.
he actually is.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, yeah, well, obviously this would be a good guy for our industry and also for any sort of people who have a criminal charge, right? Unfairly, I think. So I was watching all of that from prison, and so I think we as an industry is very lucky that the current U.S. president is very pro crypto, and he's very smart.
How do you rate the presidency so far?
I think it's great.
Yeah.
Number one is look, this is President Trump understands business. I think a lot of people are worried about the tariffs, etc. But I think that's just negotiation, right? So and it's not a typical geopolitics type of negotiation. But it's a very typical business type of negotiation. In a business environment, you go up super high, you go in super high, and then you go low. You eventually land at a spot. That's very common in business. In geopolitics, you usually don't see that because it does have large impact on the industries, economies, etc. But it's actually kind of refreshing to see. Yeah. And I think President Trump is very much a deals guy. He will make deals.
Do you think the trade war with China and Donald Trump could end sooner rather than later?
I think so. China are very good deal guys.
So he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. So the Chinese guys are very smart at making deals. Initially, the way that it was communicated, I think the Chinese guys will not like it because Chinese guys like in the Asian culture we care about face.
Yes.
Right. So if you publicly say, "Look, we're going to demand this much," and they're gonna say, "Look, we're
they don't like being like hustled and bustled."
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's a bit of a culture difference. Whereas in America, especially with President Trump, it's like you see his meetings televised through social media in real time, which is really good, really refreshing to see. Right. You don't see that with most other presidents. But he's doing things differently, But I think eventually they all have very good advisors. They all have people who understand the different cultures, etc. So I'm very confident. But at least now they're negotiating.
Yes.
Right. Whereas previously they wasn't talking.
No.
They were just like softly cutting off each other. At least now they're talking. So I'm actually very optimistic. Yeah.
I love that. What do you think about, speaking of meme coins, what do you think about Trump's meme coin?
I actually don't know too much about it because I heard so many different stories from different people.
Yeah.
Some say it's really closely associated with him. Some say it's not at all. I actually don't know that much.
There's some association, right? Because they're hosting a dinner in May 22nd with access for the top 20 holders of the meme coin, 25, something like that.
Yeah.
So there's some access, clearly, but
Yeah.
are you a top 25 holder of Trump's meme coin?
No. So
Tom Lee expresses optimism about both the stock market and Bitcoin, noting their resilience in navigating economic shocks like inflation, rate hikes, and trade tariff. He believes that companies' ability to adapt and the improving macroeconomic environment could lead to new market highs by 2025. Bitcoin, in particular, stands out as a hedge against traditional market risks, with institutional adoption through ETFs and broader recognition positioning it for significant growth. Meanwhile, Binance CEO CZ discusses the transformative potential of blockchain technology, especially in sectors like AI and biotech. He highlights the growing integration of cryptocurrencies into traditional finance and innovation, emphasizing the potential for a massive surge in the crypto market. With these developments, both Lee and CZ see a promising future for Bitcoin and blockchain in shaping the global financial ecosystem. What role do you think Bitcoin will play in the future of investing? How do you see tariffs influencing market trends this year? Share your thoughts in the comments.